right, we are continuing on in this afternoon class on our proving ground. So we were introduced to it, we worked through it, and the last video we did was final adjustments and texture overlays. So I'm going to go ahead and open up that project in Photoshop. And where can I find it? You want all of your stuff to be nicely organized in your master folder. We are finishing up proving ground number 1. And within that, just to review, I made a duplicate of my assignment 1 PSD. How do you make a duplicate? I held down Option and I dragged it to the desktop. And when I did that, you see that it now exists here and it exists here. So when you drag it by holding down Option, it makes a copy of it. And then I did the same thing for my assignment 2, not the PSD of assignment 2, but the finished cutout PNG. So I hold down Option, I drag it, you see that little plus sign. And now those are the two that I put into a Proving Ground 1 folder. Did that. And then I renamed assignment 1 into Proving Ground 1 because I don't want to accidentally overwrite my initial assignment. And then you drag and drop your PNG into that multi-layered landscape. So that's the way it's designed to be. So there he is, right? And then what did we do? We did lots of things in the last videos and last class in order to learn how to pose the creature and find their position. We use Puppet Warp for that. And then we learned how to adjust the lighting and all the shadows underneath. We actually probably did more legitimate compositing work just to make the creature match the environment and vice versa than we had done before. And I found it helpful to simplify all of those elements we're using. So what do I mean by that? The full landscape, I kind of simplified it into foreground, middle ground, background with just a few layers. So I have the sky, I have the middle ground, which is a bunch of different layers combined that I merged together. Then I have these foreground elements. And then I started compositing a creature that I placed onto that. There he is. But I also kept what's called the hero reference. So when you bring the PNG in, it comes in as a smart object. I leave that as a smart object, but I make a duplicate of it in order to pose it. And that rasterizes it. So you see how that's a smart object, has that little black box in the corner of the layer preview window. When you duplicate it and rasterize it, then you can actually change the pixels. So I did that to change the pose. And then we learned how to do a non-destructive overlay layer on a layer on top that we filled with middle gray and then set not to normal mode, but to overlay mode. If it was on normal mode, it would look like this. That way, anything that we dodged and burned, that we made lighter and darker, shows through, but everything else is invisible. So that's our non-destructive overlay layer. And I did that to help with the lighting. And then specifically to help with the lighting of the shadow underneath the creature, I created a few levels of internally composited shadow. And then to finish it off, I did a little example of a texture overlay of breath coming out of the creature's mouth. It's like he's just inhaled pipe smoke and is blowing it out. But then over the top of that, because I didn't want that smoke to be in front of him, I put another duplicate of the creature and then did levels adjustments to that. And then played with dodging and burning the creature itself to get the shadows on the toes. You can see that. And then you do a non-destructive overlay layer just on the creature. So on normal mode, it looks like this. But in overlay mode, that allows me to dodge and burn it in a way that's non-destructive to the pixels. And then last but not least, overall texture overlays that kind of bathe everything in similar glazing and temperature. And that's where we ended up. We have kind of the creature matching the environment in terms of the angle of the anatomy and the angle of the lighting and the very atmosphere. Kind of just matches, no matter how ridiculous that creature might be. So now what do we do? Well, we of course save it as a PSD, just Command S. And then to put it to canvas, we need to save it as a JPEG. Why as a JPEG? I'm going to save it to the desktop because we are filling a rectangle. And JPEG is always the best online format if you're filling a rectangle if it's not animated. We use PNG when we need it to be free-floating, not filling a rectangle. So you'll see that JPEG isn't an option here, so I have to say save a copy, saving it to the desktop, same name, Karl Proving Ground 1, but this time the format is going to be JPEG. And what's also nice about JPEG is it will give me this slider, and I want to make sure that under the preview, have preview checked, that the memory is less than 5 megabytes. So right now it's at 6, so if I take it down to 9, it's beneath 5 megabytes. That's because there's a lot of different pixels in here now, because everything's been customized. Okay, now I look on my desktop, I find it, I mark my online files as orange for online, and then I put it into my Proving Ground 1 folder. So now I have 3 files in there. I have my PSD, which has everything combined in it. I have a copy of the PNG creature from assignment 2 still there. And then I have this JPEG. Now this is something you can do with the JPEG before you put it to canvas. You can just open it up in preview. The Macintosh system's just generic media viewer. And I can look at it in preview, and I can use direct adjustments basically, but in a simplified form in preview. So I go to Tools. This is just on the JPEG, so you're not hurting your PSD. And I go to Adjust Color. This is a nice kind of quality check, especially if I haven't looked at it in a while. So what the Adjust Color options are within preview is a simplification of the direct adjustments we do in Photoshop. What are those? Those are levels, those are color balance, those are hue saturation. All of that is here. So you have a levels slider right here. And so I can make it darker, I can make it brighter. And if I'm ever unsure of what it looked like before, I can go to Reset All. So it will go to how it opened. The one thing I like to do is I like to do what's called auto toning, which you can also do in Photoshop, but it's very heavy-handed in Photoshop. So I like to do it once I have a JPEG. So if I just click on auto levels, what it will do is even out my histogram. So what you can see is that I don't have any bright whites in my histogram. My brightest white is about 15% gray. If I say auto levels, it will push up the whites so that there is a brightest white. And maybe that makes my image a little bit more clear. But then I can back it off a little bit and say, yeah, not quite so much, because I want it to feel kind of foggy. But I don't want it where it was. I want it maybe right there. And then in terms of the midtones, do I want it brighter or darker? If anything, just maybe a little bit brighter in the midtones. And then my darks are fine. I don't think I need to go any darker. I can also, now it has to do with color temperature, color balance. I can play with the temperature. I can push it more towards the blues, more towards the oranges. I'm liking the kind of blues. So I'll just push it a tiny bit that way. And then more towards the greens or more towards the magentas. Don't really love either of them, so I'll keep it right in the middle. And then there's a nice little option for taking it towards sepia tone, which is kind of a rusty color. if you want it to look a little bit more vintage in its color processing, maybe just a tiny bit. And then sharpness. Now this is a really high resolution image. It's made for printing at least 8 by 10. So sharpness is not going to make a huge amount of difference, but you can see it makes a little bit of difference. So maybe I want to sharpen it just a little bit, because sometimes those texture overlays can hurt the sharpness. So this is when you have your JPEG saved. This is called preview. You just double click your JPEG and it will open up on a Mac in this program preview. And then to get these options, you go to Tools and Adjust Color. So it's a way of doing direct adjustments without hurting your PSD, just to see if you like it. It's kind of playing with it. It's photo editing. Okay, then you can play with the limits on levels, like your highlights. I can limit the highlights maybe a tiny bit, or I can limit the shadows, which I don't really want to do. And then you don't need to save it. Preview automatically saves, but you could go to File, Save. But as soon as you close it, it's going to save that JPEG. Now this is what I like to do with that JPEG that I've just modified in preview. I like to drag it into my PSD on top of everything else. So I go to my topmost layer in Photoshop, and then I drag that preview, and you'll notice it's not that different, but it is a little different. And then I can decide if I want to keep that or if I want to blend that in with opacity, with what I had before. And that might yield a new JPEG. So now I save this as my PSD with my combined smart object of the JPEG from preview on top. And then once that's saved, I can save it as a copy and save that again as a JPEG and overwrite the one before. So now I've made like a full understanding of it. It's below 5 megabytes. Now I'm ready for it to go into Canvas. So I'm going to open up the program, or open up the unit. Right now I have the course outline open, but I'll get back to that. And the way I can shortcut to where we turn in Proving Ground 1 is clicking on Assignments from the Canvas homepage and going down to Proving Ground number 1. Where we post it, it's worth 1.5 points. But all that work I just did to really improve my creature, I have not started a post yet. That is worth only half a point out of the 1.5 points. So what do? I follow directions. I start with my name. And the first thing I post is actually rubric requirement number 2. You don't need to label it, you just need to be aware. So what is rubric requirement number 2? What am I posting with that JPEG I just created? It is here. It is recognizing commonalities among seemingly unrelated situations. Did I place my PNG creature onto a landscape background image in a way that utilized a common light direction and accommodated for the angle of our creature's anatomy? I did my very best with every trick I could to make those things match. So now I have to submit that. It's the first thing you submit because everything else is going to flow from it. So I hit return, and now I put that JPEG in, and then I'm going to shrink it to fit a little bit more than halfway. Some of you are still putting your images in a little too small, so I can't really see your decisions as well as I would like to, even when I zoom in. So this would be halfway. This is on a browser that is 100%, right? So I want it more than halfway. Not filling up the whole thing, but still more than halfway. Okay, then it posts. So if I submitted this, it would get 0.5 out of 1.5 because there's 2 more rubric requirements I need to meet.